Eclipse at the Edge of the World. This is an exhaustive investigative report on the 2025 Bondi Beach Hanukkah Massacre. Introduction. Shattering of the Australian ideal, the myth of the lucky country. Australia has long defined itself by its coastlines, liminal spaces of hedonism, egalitarianism, and safety. Bondi Beach, arguably the most famous stretch of sand in the southern hemisphere, serves as the spiritual capital of this national ethos. It is a place where the harshness of the Australian interior meets the infinite possibility of the Pacific, a stage where nature performs its rituals of leisure. On Sunday, December 14th, 2025, that stage was drenched in blood. The events that transpired at Archer Park, adjacent to the iconic sands, did not merely result in the loss of life. They fractured the psychological compact that had held Australian society together since the Port Arthur massacre of 1996. The attack, carried out by a father and a son against a Jewish religious celebration, was a collision of global sectarian hatreds and local bureaucratic failures. It was an event that defied the comfortable narratives of lone wolf terrorism, revealing instead a complex web of familial radicalization, international terror financing, and legislative loopholes that allowed a known extremist associate to access a military-grade arsenal.
This is the Roots and Cab Show. Bam, bam, calling shots like a maestro. This is the Roots and Cab Show, where the wild and the crazy grow. Turn it up, feel the rhythm flow. Hustle, rock, bam, bam. Let's go, let's go.
The scope of the carnage. At 6:47 p.m., as the sun began its descent on a humid summer evening, the Chanukah by the Sea festival was interrupted by the mechanical crack of high-velocity gunfire. In the span of approximately 10 minutes, 16 people were killed, including one perpetrator, and over 40 were injured. The victims ranged from a 10-year-old girl named Matilda, described as a ray of sunshine, to an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor, Alexander Kleitman, who had survived the Nazis only to die at the hands of modern Islamist extremism. This report aims to provide a definitive minute-by-minute reconstruction of the massacre, a deep psychological profile of the killers, and an unflinching analysis of the systematic failures that enabled them. It is written with the gravity required by the loss of life and the urgency demanded by the exposed vulnerabilities in Australia's national security architecture. The Architect of Terror, a dual portrait of radicalization. Sajid Akram, the invisible man, the older of the two gunmen, 50-year-old Sajid Akram, presents a case study in the terrifying banality of evil. Born in Hyderabad, India, a fact clarified by Telangana police after initial confusion regarding Pakistani origins, Sajid migrated to Australia in 1998 on a student visa. Over the next 3 decades, he constructed a facade of perfect integration. He transitioned to a partner visa in 2001, became an AA permanent resident, and established himself as a small business owner, running a fruit shop in Sydney's West. Sajid was the grey man, unremarkable, law-abiding, and fiscally responsible. Neighbors and customers knew him as a quiet, hard-working man, yet beneath this veneer, Sajid was cultivating a little capacity. He was the logistical mastermind of the attack, using his clean criminal record to navigate the bureaucracy of gun ownership. Unlike the stereotypical profile of a marginalized angry loner, Sajid was a man of means and status within his micro-community, a licensed firearm owner who belonged to a gun club, a membership he used to justify his arsenal. The enigma of Sajid Akram lies in the silence of his radicalization. Was he the primary driver, influencing his son? Or was he a father dragged into the abyss by the radicalized child? The forensic evidence suggests the former. It was Sajid who applied for the gun licenses. It was Sajid who purchased the weapons, and it was Saeed who stood on the footbridge and fired the opening salvos. His death at the hands of police left many questions unanswered, but his actions speak to deep seated, patient hatred that lay dormant for years before erupting. Navid Akram is the clean skin that wasn't. If Sahid was the logistical arm, his 24-year-old son, Navid Akram, was the ideological heart. Born in Sydney, Navid was an Australian citizen, a bricklayer by trade, and a young man who drifted between the secular world of construction and the subterranean world of online extremism. Navid's trajectory was not invisible to the state. In October 2019, at the age of 18, he came to the attention of the Australian Security Intelligence Organization. He was investigated for 6 months due to his close association with a Sydney-based Islamic State cell by Isaac El Matari, a figure later jailed for plotting and insurgency. The investigation was exhaustive, involving interviews with family and surveillance of his digital footprint. However, the conclusion reached by ASIO that Navid posed no indication of any ongoing threat would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation. Navid was categorized as an associate rather than a principal threat, a clean skin who had filtered with radicalism but not committed to violence. This assessment failed to account for the concept of taqiyya, deception, or the latency of radicalization in Islam. Navid retreated into the shadows, maintaining a low profile, working his job and refraining from over social media posting since he knew that he's being watched, all while his commitment to ISIS hardened. The familial dynamic, a pact of blood. The relationship between father and son was described by family members as close, particularly after Saeed's separation from Navid's mother. They lived together in a house in Bondi, a domestic setting that became a radicalization incubator. The fishing trip cover story they used in the days leading up to the attack, telling Navid's mother they were going away for the weekend, reveals a high degree of coordination and shared duplicity. This was not a case of one dragging the other, it was a partnership. They traveled together, trained together, and ultimately killed together. The road to radicalizations, signals lost in the noise. The Philippines connection. The Davao trip, a crucial turning point in the timeline, occurred in November 2025, just weeks before the attack. Sahid and Navid traveled to the Philippines, flying from Sydney to Manila and then on to Davao City in the southern Mindanao region. This region has historically been a stronghold for Islamist insurgent groups, including Abu Sayyaf and the Maud group, both of which have pledged allegiance to ISIS. Investigators believe this trip was not for tourism. The hypothesis is that the Akrams sought spiritual sanctioning for their attack or specific tactical training. The timing, returning to Sydney just 2 weeks prior to the massacre, suggests that the trip was final stage of their preparation, a jihadi tourism expedition to solidify their resolve. The failure of Australian Border Force or intelligence agencies to flag this travel, especially given Navid's history, represents a significant lapse in the monitoring of persons of interest. Significant lack. The Matari cell and the failure of surveillance. The shadow of Isaac El Matari looms large over this case. Matari, a self-declared ISIS commander, was the nexus of a terror network in Sydney. Navid's association with him in 2019 should have marked him for lifelong surveillance. The fact that Navid was able to drift off the radar, access his father's weapons, and travel internationally highlights a structural weakness in Western counterterrorism, the inability to legally monitor individuals who have not yet committed a crime but reside in the ecosystem of terror. The peaceful fisherman narrative, pushed by some associates and potentially used as a cover by the Akrams, themselves served to deflect suspicion. They used the guise of a benign hobby, fishing, to explain their movements, their gear, and their time away from home. It was a simple, effective lie that allowed them to move weapons and explosives without raising an alarm. The arsenal of democracy's failure, gun laws and loopholes, the myth of the ironclad NFA. Since 1996, Australia has touted its national firearms agreement, as the gold standard of gun control. The Port Arthur massacre, where Martin Bryan used a semi automatic AR 15 to kill 35 people, led to the banning of self loading rifles. However, the Bondi shooting exposed the fragility of this system. Sahid Akram held a Category AB license. This license class allows for the ownership of air rifles, rimfire rifles other than self loading, shotguns other than pump action or self loading, though some lever action straight pull variants are permitted. Centerfire rifles, bolt action or straight pull. The weaponry of the massacre. The Akrams did not need illegal black market machine guns to inflict mass casualties. They utilized Beretta BRX-1 rifle, a straight pull centerfire rifle. While technically a manual, a skilled operator can fire this weapon almost as fast as a semi automatic. It fires a high velocity round capable of penetrating barriers and causing catastrophic tissue damage. The Stoger M3000 M3K shotguns, 12 gauge shotguns customized for rapid loading and firing at the close ranges of Archer Park, these weapons were devastatingly effective. Improvised explosive devices, IEDs, crude pipe bombs, and incendiary devices were found in their vehicle and at the scene, intended to maim first responders or create a secondary kill zone. The licensing scandal. The central controversy of the investigation is how Saeed Akram obtained and kept his license. 2015, Saeed applies for a license. It lapses due to a missing photograph. 2019, Navid is investigated for terrorism links. 2020, Saeed reapplies for a license. 2023, the license is granted. The NSW Police Firearms Register failed to cross reference Saeed's application with the intelligence holdings regarding his son. Wow, who lived at the same address. There was no red flag system that triggered a review of the household suitability for firearms. Wow, this bureaucratic silo effectively armed the terror cell. As Premier Mins later admitted, the definition of fit and proper must include criminal intelligence, not just criminal records. December 14th, the convergence of light and shadow. The setting. Chanukah by the Sea, Sunday, December 14th, was meant to be a celebration of resilience. The Jewish festival of Hanukkah, the festival of lights, commemorates the victory of the Maccabees over tyranny and the miracle of the oil. Chanukah by the Sea was a beloved annual tradition organized by Chabab of Bondi. It brought the solemnity of the synagogue to the open air of the beach. The atmosphere was festive. A giant menorah stood ready to be lit. There were fairground rides, a petting zoo for children, and a kosher food stalls. Families sat on picnic blankets on the grass of Archer Park. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the sand. It was a scene of quintessential Australian multicultural harmony until it wasn't. Killers arrived. Saeed and Navid Akram arrived in a vehicle packed with their arsenal. They packed nearby, leaving the IEDs in the car, perhaps intending to detonate them later, and proceeded on foot to the Campbell Parade footbridge. This location was chosen with tactical malice. The footbridge offered elevation cover and a clear field of fire into the park below. They were dressed in black, contrasting sharply with the summer attire of the beachgoers. The slaughter, a minute by minute reconstruction. 6:47 p.m. The first shots. The attack began without warning. Witnesses reported hearing pops that were initially mistaken for fireworks. A tragic recurrent detail in mass shootings. The crack of the Beretta rifle cut through the ambient noise of the ocean and the crowd. Minute 0 to 2 minutes. The shooters opened fire indiscriminately into the densest parts of the crowd. The initial volley was devastating. People fell where they stood. The realization of what was happening rippled through the crowd slower than the bullets. Run! Gun! Screams began to erupt. 6:49 p.m. Panic and chaos. The crowd scattered. Parents threw their bodies over their children. People sprinted toward the beach, diving into the sand for cover, or ran toward the shops on Campbell Parade, the kill zone. From the bridge, the Akrams tracked targets. They shot people in the back as they fled. They targeted the petting zoo area where families were clustered. Matilda's run. A 10-year-old Matilda was separated from her parents in the crush. She was spotted running toward her father when a bullet struck her. She fell on the grass, a life extinguished in mid stride. A rabbi's last act. Rabbi Eli Schlander, organizing the event, did not run. He began ushering people toward exits, using his body as a shield. He was targeted and killed, dying as he had lived, serving his community. 6:52 p.m. The police engagement. NSW police officers from the Eastern Suburbs Police Area Command arrived within minutes. However, they were general duties officers armed with Glock service pistols. They were immediately pinned down by the superior range and power of the Akram's rifles. The firefight. Despite being outgunned, the officers advanced, and constable and a probationary constable were shot and critically wounded as they tried to storm the footbridge. Their sacrifice drew in the shooters' fire away from the civilians, buying precious seconds for the crowd to escape. 6:55 p.m. The turn of the tide. The police returned fire began to tell. Sahid Akram, exposing himself to take a shot, was hit by police rounds. He collapsed on the bridge, the rifle falling from his hands. He died at the scene. His mission of hate ending in the dirt. Navid Akram, seeing his father fall, continued to fire or attempt to reload. The attack was entering its final desperate phase. 6:58 p.m. The site secured. Paramedics begin triage. Heroes in the kill zone. The intervention of Ahmed Al Ahmed. The bystander amidst the carnage, a figure emerged who would become the face of Australian resilience. Ahmed Al Ahmed, a 43-year-old fruit shop owner and a Muslim immigrant from Syria, was at the beach with his family. He was not a soldier or a cop, he was a civilian. Yet, witnessing the slaughter, he made a choice that defied instinct. Act of valor. While others fled, Ahmed moved toward the gunfire. Footage captured him crouching behind parked cars, stalking the remaining gunman Navid. In a moment of supreme courage, Ahmed sprinted across the open ground and tackled the shooter from behind. The struggle. Ahmed wrestled the long gun away from Navid. In the scuffle, he was shot in the shoulder and hand. The moral victory. Having disarmed the terrorist, Ahmed stood over him with the rifle. He had every reason to pull the trigger. Instead, he pointed the weapon at the man, then placed it on the ground and raised his hands to the approaching police. Ahmed heroism prevented further loss of life and provided a glimmer of humanity in an otherwise pitch black event. The victims, stolen lives and broken lineages. The toll was 16 dead, including Sahid Akram, and 40 injured. The victims were not just numbers, they were pillars of their families. Matilda 10. Matilda was a student at the Harmony Russian School. Her family described her as sunshine and full of life. Her death struck a particular chord with the nation. The killing of a child at a petting zoo is a violation of the most fundamental human taboo. Alexander Kleitman, 87, a Holocaust survivor. Alexander had lived through the darkest chapter of the 20th century. He migrated to Australia to find peace. To be murdered at a Hanukkah celebration in Sydney is a tragic irony that underscores the persistence of anti Semitism. Boris, 69, and Sofia Gurman, 61. This couple died as heroes. Boris was seen on dashcam footage attempting to tackle Saeed Akram early in the attack. He knocked the gunman down, but was overpowered. His wife, Sofia, ran to help him and was also killed. They died fighting. Rabbi Eli Schlanger, a father of 5, including a newborn. Rabbi Schlanger was the spiritual heart of the event. He was a chaplain who worked in prisons and hospitals, a man dedicated to service. His murder decapitated the leadership of the Bondi Shabbat community, and some others are Dan Elkane, French national, 28, Reuven Morrison, a businessman, Tibor Watson, 78, a lollipop man. The aftermath, the investigation, recrimination, and grief. The Campsie raid. In the hours following the attack, police raided a property in Campsie used by the Akrams. They found a bomb-making factory. The presence of further IEDs suggested that the Bondi attack might have been part of a larger campaign. Or that day, intended to inflict even greater casualties. The ISIS-inspired ruling police commissioner Christy Barrett formally declared the event a terrorist attack inspired by Islamic State. The discovery of ISIS flags in their car and the digital evidence of their on their devices confirmed their ideological motivation. This was not a mental health incident, it was an act of war, the political blame game. The fallout was immediate. Prime Minister Albanese condemned the pure evil of the act, but faced intense questioning regarding the ASIO failure. Opposition leader John Howard criticized the government for failing to maintain the integrity of the gun laws he introduced. Visa cancellation. Why was Sahid Akram allowed to stay? A gun license. How did Category AB license get issued to a terror suspect's father? Surveillance. Why did the 2019 investigation into Navid end? Those are some questions that we have. A nation divided and the united. Return of fear for the Jewish community. The attack confirmed their worst fears. The rise in anti-Semitic rhetoric globalized the Intifada, had transitioned from slogans to slaughter. The chief rabbi of the UK warned that hate speech inevitably leads to hate action. Synagogues and Jewish schools across Australia went into lockdown with armed guards becoming a permanent fixture. However, the actions of Ahmed al-Ahmed provided a shield. He became a symbol of good citizenship, proving that ideology, not ethnicity, is the enemy. Islam is the enemy. Donations poured into GoFundMe for his recovery, raising over 1 million in 24 hours. The legislative response. The government moved swiftly to close the loopholes. New laws were proposed to ban non-citizens from holding firearm licenses, mandate intelligence checks for all license applicants and their household members, increase the powers of ASIO to monitor dormant associates of terror cells. Conclusion. The long shadow of Archer Park. The 2025 Bondi Beach massacre will be remembered as the moment the Australian ideal finally shattered. The lucky country could no longer rely on its geography to protect it from the global virus of sectarian violence. The tragedy revealed that the systems designed to protect the public, immigration vetting, gun control, intelligence, surveillance, were built for a different era. They were porous to the clean-skinned terrorists, the patient radical who plays by the rules until the moment they decide to break them all. Yet, amidst the horror, the image that endures is not the black dad gunman on the bridge. It is the image of Ahmed al-Ahmed, bleeding and unarmed, standing over a fallen terrorist, refusing to meet hate with hate. It is the image of Boris Gurman charging a rifle with his bare hands. It is the memory of Rabbi Schlanger shepherding his flock. Bondi Beach remains beautiful, but the sands of Archer Park are now hallowed ground. The shadows have lengthened, but as the Hanukkah candles lit in defiance, the following night proved the light has not been extinguished. And I'm Bam Bam. This has been the Rustin Cast Show. Thank you. Subscribe, like, and comment below. God bless. Be vigilant, be honest. Watch your back, and always remember that God loves you.
Catch the wave, let your dreams ignite. In the world of business, reach new heights. Join the journey, hear the words unfold. Bam Bam's vision, turning stories to gold.